Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time you're watching this. This is my professional analysis of the 3 TED Talks. So, first of all, we'll start off with answering the questions. The first TED Talk that I watched was called The Radical Possibilities of Man-Made DNA, presented by Floyd E. Romesberg. I'll put a link in the description, maybe I'll put a hyperlink up on the screen, we'll see what I can do during editing. Other than that, we'll start with the structure of the presentation. He started off with what is and ended with what could be, which was wonderful presentation when referencing resonance. Ending on the high note, bringing the realm of possibility beyond what it currently is. He gives the call to adventure about 2 minutes in, which is 1/7 of the way through the video, which is solid pacing. About 3.5 minutes in, he shows this image of semi-synthetic life, grounding the idea of man-made life, grounding the possibility, and goes back to what is. Approximately 6.5 minutes in, he goes back up to what could be, speaking about the possibilities for protein drugs made with synthetic amino acids, which obviously can only be made through semi-synthetic life. The basic building blocks aren't there to make the synthetic amino acids. Why is this presentation powerful? 9 minutes in, he focuses on the risks people it presents the possibilities for new protein drugs, seamlessly, which can be used to treat a variety of illnesses. 10.5 minutes in, he further grounds the idea of semi-synthetic life as a part of what only way we can make protein drugs is by synthesizing amino acids, and the easiest way time of synthetic life is here. Bacteria and other microorganisms, and ending on a high note, manufacturers hopeful for what comes next. It's really difficult to manufacture these in a lab. The second thing is designer life forms, and possibly he presents the possibility of semi-synthetic worms in the near future, which is beyond anything we have today and is amazing. And he took the complex idea of genetic sequencing and simplified it with an alphabet metaphor, which makes it easier to understand from layman terms. As far as why I liked the presentation, was it the content alone, or was it how the speaker delivered the content? The speaker made effective use of the contrast between what is and what could be, and went back and forth between the two throughout the presentation. And he fluently wove stories into his speech. Another reason I like the presentation is this is brand new science. The research started in 1999, only a year after I was born. However, the culmination of 20 years of work has made amazing leaps and bounds beyond anything I would have ever imagined. And finally, my favorite thing about the presentation is there's new life that never existed before and would never have come to be naturally on our planet, at the very least. What made the content appealing and what made it relatable? Well, I personally enjoy synthetic chemistry and microbiology, and it's applicable for protein drugs, which is highly applicable in the real world and is currently used to treat things like diabetes. And it opens up new possibilities if we create new protein drugs with synthetic amino acids, which opens up possibilities to work on cancer, to clean up oil spills in the ocean. And these new bacteria are little amino acid factories, and it's wonderful. How did the speaker draw you in to care about the subject and topic? Well, he started off with real-life applications and analogous issues treated with natural protein drugs, and then stated the real-life issues for theoretical semi-synthetic protein drugs. which starts with what is, and then goes on with what could be, and creates real-world applications, which makes it applicable for the average person. What did I get out of the presentation that I would not have experienced reading an article or this report? Well, the speaker addressed possible issues that could present, and addressed why they weren't really all that problematic. And then he also posed open-ended questions to provoke free thought as to future development. And at the end of the video, actually, I believe it was the host, it didn't actually say his name, came out and he asked questions. He was just so This brings us to our second presentation, as why civilians suffer more once possibilities that this opened up, as to what life can be. Structure of the presentation, she started not only on Earth, but instead of elsewhere in the universe. She says, have you ever wondered what it would be like to live in a place and what kinds of emotions did the presenter elicit? And then she quickly turns that into a negative. The presenter left even the host because there's no schools, no laws, and no social institutions. Awe-inspiring. Really, nothing holding a country together. He created a sense of awe at a new life form. And she tells her personal experience in post-war Kosovo, showing images of a war-torn country. I'll put those up right here. After that, she transitions into her career as a public health policy researcher to establish credibility. Show that she knows what she's talking about. This is her life's work. And then she poses open-ended questions as to how we can help the people suffering in these countries. After that, she states that the vast majority of death and disability from war happens after the cessation of the conflict. This is important because we generally think that after a war is over and we get out of there, things are just better there, and really it's not. Things get much, much worse after the war is over. After that, she brings up Doctors Without Borders, a worldwide organization of doctors that go wherever they're needed, usually in countries that are currently suffering from war or don't have systems set up in place for medical help. And they were in Liberia 11 years after their civil war had ended, which is important because in a country of 4.5 million people, they had less than 50 doctors in the entire country. And there was an Ebola outbreak in 2014, which they had no way of treating. Then she also brings up and dispels worries about corruption in public health sectors, which is a big issue when people think of funding these countries and setting up their public health networks. But then she dispels it with the success story of the World Bank's involvement in Afghanistan, helping them set up their public health systems. And even says that she wishes we did some of the things that they did, like using data to make policy. The other issue that she brings up is that rebuilding is unsustainable. And she explains that the current temporary health systems are way more unsustainable because we funnel in tons and tons of money, but then as soon as that money dries up, the health system just is gone. And they don't rebuild it, and they're left with nothing, just like they had before. So instead of using the funds to create these temporary health systems, we should be instead investing more of that money, not necessarily all of it, into building a lasting health system that the country would then fund. Then she breaks the tension with the comic. I'll put that up right here. I thought it was pretty funny, although not entirely relevant to the presentation. After that, she creates a sense of urgency, a call to action. She doesn't exactly state what the action should be, but she says we need to do something. After that, she wraps up with her inspiration as the builders of, well, the presenter used descriptive language and powerful imagery to show how war affects communities after the conflict is over. And she shared her first-hand experiences as well as similar events worldwide that she wasn't necessarily directly involved in. And she showed not only how and why these efforts fail, but also how they can succeed. So why did I like this presentation? Was it the content alone, or was it how the speaker delivered the content? Well, for me, I enjoyed the content as someone who has a background in military medicine. I also enjoyed the speaker's passion on the subject. However, it wasn't a very strong presentation according to resonance. The delivery was somewhat lacking as far as it was all focused on what is, as well as the fact that she sort of conveyed herself as the hero instead of the audience. She didn't really empower the audience to do anything, although she tried to drive them to do something. She didn't really fill the mentor role as far as helping them figure out what those steps would be. Why did the speaker draw me in to care about the subject or topic? She used powerful visuals from war-torn countries. A child being passed over a barbed wire fence is an evocative image. It shows the suffering of these people. They're willing to get their child out, sacrificing themselves potentially, or trying to find a different way through, possibly a more risky way through, but they can't get over like that. And what did I get out of the presentation that I could not have experienced from reading an article on the topic? Honestly, the presentation didn't really bring much to the table that couldn't have been conveyed in an article. Even a report probably would have fulfilled the same purpose as this presentation. And what kind of emotions did the presenter elicit, and how did they do this? Well, she created strong feelings of sadness, fear, and frustration through a sort of empathy, mostly through those images, but also telling her personal story. She didn't really name any specifics. However, she does bring up examples of people who are afraid for their well-being because these medical health networks aren't in place in these countries. On to presentation number 3. Image recognition that triggers augmented reality by Matt Mills. We'll start with the structure of the presentation. 8 seconds in, he starts with comparing phones processing information to the human brain. A sort of what could be. So he starts on a high point and then goes back down to a low point, showing a demonstration of the technology as what is. They have a person with an iPhone recording and showing these overlaid images of augmented reality, putting videos onto just pictures in real life. So the first example is he's holding a painting of a poet, and the poet pours a drink and starts reciting one of his poems. After that, he shows applications in newspapers, which can become quickly obsolete in this day and age. However, if the person who writes the article inserts an image into the newspaper, he can attach the sound bites or videos, news headlines onto the newspaper, which can not only keep it more relevant, but also provide more information than what would necessarily be in the newspaper itself. After that, he makes a joke about a router and how in Britain they call it a router. And so he opens up the back of the router and aims the iPhone at it, and it starts giving a visual on how to set it up. And it's really interesting because it's not necessarily an image, it's just the back of the router itself. And suddenly these 3D models start coming in and showing like this cord goes here, this cord goes there. And it has a wide variety of real-world applications. After that, he takes out a picture of the development team and then goes on to make it a video through the iPhone. The majority of the presentation is done through the iPhone. The audience is not only looking at him standing up on the stage, but behind him is a video of him standing up on the stage with augmented reality. Then after that, he gives the applications in classrooms. There's children with the phone looking at an image and watching it come to life and saying, "Oh, it's magic!" And he goes on to explain that there are teachers that have animated entire textbooks, which creates a new level of depth in their learning. And then, to show the ease of use, he makes an animation with the audience. And while it's processing, he lists other possible uses for it, car engines, and etc. And after a few minutes, it takes roughly 2 minutes to process. He plays back the animation for the audience, showing that you can make these animations in 2 minutes. And so, why is this presentation powerful or moving? It was a really neat demonstration of this new technology, but I didn't find it particularly powerful or moving. I'm not going to go buy an iPhone just so I can use this app. Why did I like the presentation? Was it content alone, or how the speaker delivered the content? I personally enjoyed the demo because technology interests me. I mean, I'm a game development major, it's kind of what I do. But the presentation aspect was particularly lacking in a lot of ways, and I'll get back to that in a little bit. What made the content appealing, and what made it relatable? Well, the content was appealing because it opened up whole new possibilities for realms of communication that don't currently exist. You can send somebody a postcard and then tell them to look at it through the app. And then they open it up and there's a video instead of just a picture, and it's really interesting. And the content was relatable because it was super simple to use. He showed it in use in 2 minutes. Why did the speaker draw you in to care about the subject or topic? The speaker really didn't do much other than present applications for it, so it didn't really draw you in enough to care about it. What did you get out of the presentation that you would not have experienced reading an article about the topic? Well, an article definitely wouldn't have been able to show the ease of use or the full range of possibilities. However, it was presented to show a wide variety of applications that definitely an article wouldn't be able to cover. Articles probably would have focused on the school applications and probably would have glossed over the applications for setting up a router or dismantling a car engine. And what kind of emotions did the presenter elicit, and how did they do this? The presenter showed the excitement of children as they watched the pictures coming to life. And they showed the convenience of it and how it could reduce frustration trying to find tutorials. And finally, it showed a sense of familial love with people sending animated cards to their loved ones. And finally, part 3 of the assignment, the 10 presentation skills. I believe Floyd, in the first presentation on semi-synthetic life, made effective use of his negative space and pauses, leaving space for the listeners to absorb what they were hearing, and giving a good pacing to his presentation. Floyd used a wonderful contrast between what is and what could be. Going back and forth between the two, Floyd also made the audience care about the topic by using real-world applications, such as insulin being used for diabetes as a protein drug, as well as presenting future possible applications for it. Floyd used a specific key phrase towards the end of his presentation. He said, "The time of semi-synthetic life is here," which could be used as a soundbite or a headline to further spread the presentation. Both Floyd and Margaret fluently wove stories into their presentation, which gave it somewhat of a more candid feel, making it much more relatable. Margaret built credibility by explaining her background as a public health researcher. Margaret also used powerful imagery throughout her presentation. There were several moments when she used pictures from the war-torn countries. Margaret and Matt both didn't really alternate between what is and what could be, and both stayed at a relatively level point throughout the story. Matt was very focused on what could be with the demo, and Margaret was a little too focused on what is, instead of trying to present any sort of solutions. She really only presented problems. And I know the presentation skills are supposed to be things that we learn from it, and I feel that those are both negative things that I can take as a lesson. Matt's demonstration of the product made it feel highly relatable and gave the audience first-hand experience with it, which is something that they can definitely spread as well. And Matt's constant talking made the presentation feel a little bit rushed. However, both Margaret and Floyd did leave pauses. Floyd especially made great use of it. And that is all. See you next week.